Very good. So it wouldn't be Frightmare in the Falls if someone didn't tell one of the guests what time their panel was at. So there you go. Ha ha! Nothing has changed. How you doing, Kieth?
If I were any better, I'd have to take something for it.
Oh, really? So Kieth, I mean, we may as well just get right down to it, all right? Like, why waste? Why waste any time, all right? Was it you, or was it McReady?
If I have been asked that question once, I have been asked that question by every other person who has said hello to me today. It's so if you think so.
There was actually, I saw an interview with Carpenter recently. They were talking about it, and what did he say? He said, "Oh, sure, I'll tell you. You just got to write me a check."
Right, exactly.
I think the point of it was that nobody knew and you weren't supposed to know. I'm going to go with that.
Well, I think that is the most true. I mean, at the time, it was a great setup for a sequel, right?
Ah, true.
You know,
if people,
it took years for that to, come out to fruition. But, I mean, you're allowed to believe whatever. It's a story. So if you think so, well, when you tell the version of your story, you tell your version of that story, it'll be true. And then somebody's going to argue about that.
Yeah. I mean, so getting then into the thing, that was kind of your first major role, I guess, right?
It was my first role.
It was your first role. Okay, well, how did you get the role?
I mean, you're right. I mean, I had been cast in something earlier. I went up for a movie earlier. I didn't get it. So this is the first real part that I got in the movies.
And what was your experience with Carpenter? Right? I mean, he's a lot of people's favorite horror film director. So what was it like working with him?
I mean, he was my favorite horror film director. I mean, I got a job, man. I'm an actor. He gave me a job. But beside that, I loved The Fog, and so I was excited to work with him. And prior to that, I only worked in the theater, and I love directors who are clear about what they want, and he was very clear about what he wanted. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And he was straightforward. He was succinct. Didn't mince a whole lot of words. I mean, we rehearsed it for 2 weeks, so we got to ask any questions we had. We had several guys. There was Richard Masser, Charlie Hallahan, Kurt. These guys were all big sci-fi guys, and so they knew how to analyze the script, and they knew about what was supposed to happen. Like one of the things that I learned and began to embrace in a science fiction movie or a horror movie, any movie really, whatever the premise is, I'm going to believe whatever you tell me to believe. If you set me up to believe A and B equals C, then the best thing about the movie is it stays consistent. A and B is always going to equal C, unless equaling something else is a bigger reveal. But it can't betray the reveal. You understand? Do you understand what I mean? As long as you don't, betray the premise, I'm going to believe you, and I'm going to take the ride with you. The moment, something happens, and it's like, he wasn't supposed to do that. I mean, then we get into movie land. But hopefully, and we never violated that. And we spent 2 weeks trying to make sure that wouldn't happen. Finally, I remember John saying, "Listen, fellas, this is the movie we're going to shoot. So, no more questions now."
And of course, it's set in the Antarctic. And so, just for clarity's sake, where were you shooting exactly?
We shot in British Columbia, Prince Rupert, and then we had to pass through the way the border is shaped. It's kind of a horseshoe kind of thing. So we went from Canada into British Columbia, then back into Canada, something like that. Listen, fellas and girls, it was 40 years ago. So a little brain fog. Okay.
Yeah. What were the conditions like then? Were you freezing your ass off like it looked like in the film?
Surprisingly, this is my memory of my experience. It was a very dry cold, so it was 20 below, but it wasn't damp like in Chicago. It was a very dry, you didn't want to, with your bare hand, you wouldn't come out and touch the car door handle. That would just be dumb. But I had a vest like this. I had my sweater, some long johns underneath, and my jeans. And in those days, we used to wear moon boots. So I had my moon boots. And that was warm enough to walk out. I would take a midnight stroll. And there was a mountain at the end of the street where my hotel was on. And I remember walking to the base of the mountain, looking up, seeing the moon, and just enjoying that. Now, again, I didn't want to stay out there for an hour like that. But for 10 or 15 minutes, it was cool. It wasn't harsh. It wasn't unbearable. And if you're geared up properly, I guess you guys, if you live in Canada, you know that. If you got, if you got the right gear on, you're cool. If you go out in 20 degrees and you have on a T-shirt, that's just stupid, So you don't do that.
All right. Do we have any thing questions? Actually, we have a mic right there. If someone could just walk right up. You go.
On that scene,
You got to ask the question so everybody hears it. So either go to the mic or stand up and.
Is this thing on? Okay. In that scene, when they touch the wire to the blood, did you know how much of that was scripted? Did you know when it was going to go off, or because that reaction, that's one of the best parts of the movie when they're doing the science experiment.
Yes, it was very scripted.
Oh, okay. So you knew when it was going to go, because a lot of those reactions, it's kind of hard to tell
But
what's
that's
acting,
my
what's
job.
not acting. Touche. Thank you.
He's just a really good actor, okay? Stop questioning it. All right. Any other thing questions?
Yes.
If you could come up with another name for the thing, what would you name it?
Wow.
Full stop. I watched the movie for the very first time, so these four set me up, and I watched it for the very first time, and I was like, I could come up with a better name than the thing. And I was like, I don't know, that was pretty thing-like.
Right. What would you call it? The Thing. Or That Thing.
At least they didn't make a sequel called Another Thing, right?
Another Thing, right? I love that. Another Thing.
The Thing, wait a minute, what about Frank wrestling in the alleyway with Rowdy Piper? Come on, that's got to be the next iconic part, right?
Again, that was a really wonderful moment in my career. We had done the thing, and John called me up and said, "Listen, I wrote this part with you in mind. Would you do it?" And I read it, and I'm like, "Yeah." And I it was a wonderful time. It was, Rowdy was not an experienced actor. He had done, I think at that time he had done an episode of The Highwayman or something like that. So, he was very anxious to, learn how to be, a good actor. So he asked a lot of questions. He was hungry to learn. And it was a joy to be able to exchange that kind of conversation with him, because he didn't think he knew everything. He knew he didn't. So he was anxious to learn. So he listened a lot. And my experience with John was he had also grown a lot in his on his directorial journey as far as communicating with actors. He wasn't bad in the thing, but I think he learned, because the thing had so many stage actors, that the way that we asked questions helped him to learn how to answer to address those questions. Because prior to that, I don't think some of the questions he had ever been asked as a director, So by the time we got to They Live, he knew how to help Rowdy. And I think he did a good job. I think he did from what I witnessed on, his communication on set. But, and they had many conversations prior to that, but, in setting it up. And that's another thing. I think a good director also they help themselves by having the homework conversations, the stuff that you can't do on set, the preparation. So he and Rowdy had talked a lot prior to shooting about the character and about the journey of the character in the film. So by the time we got on set, they had a kind of code, they had a shorthand for how they communicated. And everything that I heard was like spot on. I was like, wow. He didn't have to have the same kind of conversation with me. And the kind of conversation he had with me was also clearer. Not that he was, a great moment in The Thing when we're all on the couch, and finally, Donald says, "I'd rather not spend the rest of the evening tied to this fucking couch." I think we only did that 2 or 3 times. John, he had it well covered, and I remember the first time we saw it, we did it. It was fine, and then John whispered something into Donald's ear, and we were all wondering what did he say? What did he say? But what you saw in the movie, his react, how he delivered the line. I don't know what John said to him, but that's the way he delivered the line next. So the reactions that you saw from us was genuine. It was like, oh, well, okay. Because we hadn't expected it. It was beautiful. And that's one of the, again, great directors know how to communicate with actors, so you get genuine responses.
Yeah, but who would win the fight? We didn't talk about that. Huh? Who would win the fight? Between you and Rowdy, come on.
Is that really a question? I could hold my own.
Is that? Come on.
Come on. Rowdy was, I'm a certified stage fighter. I've, got my certification. But, Rowdy was a professional wrestler. I learned a lot from him, so don't mess with me. And he taught me how to sell it. And I've never felt safer in a fight than the fight that I had with Rowdy Piper. We rehearsed it for 2 weeks with Jeff Amata was the fight choreographer. And he never hurt me. I hit him once. I punched him dead in the face, and I was like, "I'm sorry." But I've never felt safer with anyone, even to today.
Any They Live questions out there?
Yeah, just a quick one. At what point in the shooting was that fight shot? Because also, that's probably one of the longest fights in the movie. It's really long.
It's only 7 minutes.
The context of it is kind of beautiful, where it's like we're so busy fighting each other that we're not seeing what's really going on. It's kind of
right. And I think in that sense, it was kind of metaphorical, because that's what we do, especially in America, when we have something to really address. The best way to disguise that is to find something else to fight about. And ultimately, if you're lucky, you get back to the original point, which is just look and see. instead of fighting me on this, just check it out. I mean, I think, the more I think about it, I mean, the message in They Live is far more significant today than it was then. It's far more resonant now. And again, the metaphor is, instead of fighting about an idea that's not yours, listen to it and address it in a way that might inform you of something you didn't know, that you really do need to know, that you will want to be informed. I mean, I think that's a great sort of message for our country to begin with, isn't it? If you stop arguing for the sake of arguing, or just because you don't initially agree with me, the nature of a suggestion or a question is that it deserves examination. That's all I'm asking. Just check it out. Ultimately, the choice is yours. You don't have to do anything. But if you don't check it out, you don't have the choice. So you're going to be stuck with only what's going on in the four corners of your own head, You might find something out that's worth examining.
There's another question here. Yep.
I was wondering if you could describe how you reacted to some of the effects going on in that sort of movie and maybe in a modern movie, how it maybe differ.
One of the things that was different in the Thing, for example. And here we are. It's here. One of the beautiful things about the Thing was those were all practical effects. There was no CGI. There was no, animation in that sense. So it was kind of wonderful. I mean, many times it was like acting 101. You're reacting to something that we're actually not seeing. For example, when he puts the defibrillator on the chest, and the chest explodes, and we see the head, sprout legs. Well, it was kind of funny because we John said, okay, the head falls off here, and it's going to walk from there to there, in that path like this. So, in the room, all we had to do, okay, it starts there. So just move your head slowly and watch it go there. There was nothing there when we filmed it. So when we saw the movie, and he said, "You gotta be fucking kidding." That was our reaction sitting there watching the movie the first time. It was like, holy shit, that's what we were saying. When I saw the first time I saw the movie, I didn't see the premiere in Hollywood. I was working in Pittsburgh. So I got invited to see the screening, and I was like this. Because I hadn't seen any of those things. The first time when you see me with the flamethrower and I put that thing on fire, that wasn't there. We had a focus point, and I turned the flamethrower on and hit the target I was aiming for, but it wasn't that thing. So I sat there going, holy shit, what the? Wow. It was fascinating. So that's the magic of the movies. And that is what's kind of really wonderful about it, because we all get to enter the world of our collective creative imaginations.
Any other They Live questions? Or you could ask anything else. Actually, you know what? You were talking about the politics there for quite a while for They Live. And, of course, on a similar sort of political spectrum, you were a big part of the documentary Horror Noir that was on Shudder a little while ago. Mm-hmm. So, a larger topic today. What do you see in terms of the black presence in horror films today? Have you seen a movement? Have you seen changes in that, or what have you seen?
I've seen the same changes you've seen. You know, I mean, you can't get away from the systemic racism in America, where, you know, black people are just not included, or if we were included in stereotypical ways. That was one of the great things about The Thing. The black guy goes to the end. Wow, we've never seen that before. You know, so that was quite innovative, and it was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I mean, it's not just cool politically, but it's cool in a humanitarian kind of way. It's like, wow, black people do live. They walk and they eat just like you and me, you know. So it was great to see that all over the place. One of the things that's wonderful about Jordan Peele is not only do black people like to go to see horror movies, but to be in them as well. We have our own stories. And some, you know, there are stories that are just about white people. There are stories that are just about black people, because that's the story that you're telling. Other than that, there's stories about people and the situations that people find themselves in, whether they're in this country or another country or that neighborhood or this neighborhood. They are just human things. You know, the reason why you're even asking me the question is because, you know, in America we've had a systemic non-inclusion that you're now seeing being broken. It is now finally opening up. And what have you discovered? Oh, black people are people too. You know, and anyone else, and any other ethnicities that are now having those same kind of reveals. Yes.
Right here. Oh, sorry.
No.
We just cross streams there.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about dead presidents. And I think this is kind of about if I could say so, it's kind of a black crime drama, right? But that movie has so much emotion in it, and it's so much sensuality, and at the same time it's so cool in a lot of the scenes that it does. Sort of, and again, if I could say this, there's an element of a groove or a vibe. If you could talk about Dead Presidents and just how the feeling of those scenes in that film was made, because it just has this, like I said, I think the best word is it's so sensual. The whole film has this feel to it, this vibe, this groove. If you could talk about the experience of making that, I'd appreciate it.
If I'm understanding the question, one of the things that you're addressing is it's one of the first, you know, sort of modern day film experiences where you get to have some insight into black life that you hadn't seen before. Usually what you see is something that's very stereotypical, whether it's coming from, you know, a white perspective or even some black perspectives that are not deeply exploratory. Here you got to see explored firsthand, you know, what a black person's life in their own neighborhood, in their own family dynamic is like. And, you know, the music was sexy. The music from the people, you're talking about the 70s. And that goes across the board. I mean, white people love black music, whether they want to admit it or not. You know, the first time you hear some Temptations music, you know, everybody wants to groove. You know, you just want to, you know, I mean, I've heard people say, oh, I don't like jazz. And I'm thinking, you're full of shit. You listen to jazz every day. You groove all the time. You know, all of your rock music is based in some instances, or many instances, is based in blues. You know, it's a funny thing how, again, in America, you know, black and white people who were trying to get away from the blues because one of the things that the blues does is it tells the truth, and it is the precursor to what hip hop and rap music does. Is tell the truth about this person's reality, and that in that sense is very much related to country music. The way country music, whatever the groove is, they tell the story about somebody's experience. Usually sad, heartbreak, but every once in a while, it's a good thing. Got my girl back, But that's those when you finally get to get some insight outside of what you've been indoctrinated into believing. And you get something, there's an embracing of it that you kind of go, oh, well, you don't even understand why you thought the other way around. You just find yourself sort of, why did I think differently? And the whole thing now about critical race theory. Critical race theory is just telling the truth. It's just, the history that you've been taught is his story. And it's so one-way bent. And the thing that your ego and your internal instinct fights against is because that's all you've ever been taught. So anytime you get to learn something new, there's a fight. Where do I stand? But once you get exposed to the truth, there's no way to go back to the other stuff that, you can't go back, because it not only affects the people who you were talking about, but it affects you and the way you think, because even what you've been used to in your own heart of hearts, inherently there were some things that were kind of fucked up about that. There were things that were wrong about that, and you don't even know why. Just something is just not right. And then when you get exposed to the truth of what it really is, you go, wow, now it makes sense. But your ego and those people around you, are they going to let you embrace that wholeheartedly? And that becomes yet another fight. Now, whether you go on that journey or not that's on you. That's between you and your God. Because now that you've been exposed to the truth, what are you going to do? And you're forced to live with the question, how do I go? There used to be a great song, Reuben, I've been thinking about a lot of things, how you're going to keep him down on the farm after he's seen Paris. Once you've been exposed to the truth, how do you go back to that other thing? Do you want your children to grow up like that? As difficult as it may be for your children to face that. That's what some of the pushback of, I'm sure you've heard, I don't want my children to be, uncomfortable. Well, you were not uncomfortable as long as I was uncomfortable. You could live with that. And how uncomfortable will it ultimately be when they become adult and to learn that you've been keeping this truth away from me all of my life? If you think it's uncomfortable now, it'll really be uncomfortable then. I don't know if that answers your question, but
What was the question? No.
yes.
My first exposure to your work would be through voice acting, specifically Spawn, the anime series, and I want to know how you got into that, how you landed that role for.
I auditioned and got a job. Somebody gave me a job. I mean, and I loved it. I had done Gargoyles prior to that, and see if you follow me along with this. For me, in my experience, Spawn and Goliath are two sides of the same coin. To me, Spawn is like Darth Vader working his way back to the Force. In spite of himself, because, in that moment when Al Simmons, sells his soul to the devil, I'll do anything just to get to see her one more time. I don't, if you think about it, any one of us in our lives have had that moment. Oh God, get me out of this, and I'll never do it again. And you make that, foxhole promise that you forget as soon as your ass is saved. Now you have to live with that, and principally, Al Simmons is made of the kind of stuff that, you're trained to be a soldier, you do a lot of bad things, but you're not a murderer. And there's something very different about killing under the guise of war than just taking someone's life. So principally, when that's what I loved about the animated series. When he runs across a bad guy just to be a bad guy's sake, it's like, no, dude. I'm not gonna put up with that. I'm not sanctioning that. I didn't tell you to do that. So he actually winds up saving the day on a good tip, in spite of himself. That's a kind of wonderful thing, and I think that it also, however indirectly, that is us. That's what happens in your own life when you may set out to do something, and in the moment of execution, maybe that wasn't as right as I thought it was to begin with, and you wind up doing the next right thing because it's the rightest thing to do. Yes, on a human tip, it has nothing to do with black, white, or ethnicity. It's just the rightest thing to do next for your fellow man. And that's the kind of great thing I love about doing the work that I do. Every time whether I'm doing a live action movie, a stage play, or an animated series, there's an opportunity to bring a little joy into someone's life. I have an opportunity to perhaps reflect back to you a piece of your own humanity that you recognize. It's not always life-shattering. It's not always going to make you cry, but sometimes it's going to, it's going to remind you of something in your life. It's going to resonate somewhere where it just gives you just feel good about having just seen that. And in a moment when your life is not feeling so well, you'll remember that and get through that moment a little easier. And that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? That's why you go to see a horror movie, because shit, somebody went through some worse shit than I'm going through. So we can get through it. It gives you a spiritual, psychological permission to be okay about whatever moment you're in, because somebody went through some gruesome stuff and got through it. Is that not true? Yeah.
Well, hang on. Linnea Quigley will be here not too much longer, so we should take one more question. And
just one more?
All right, we'll take two.
We got a few minutes.
You haven't asked one yet, so.
Yes.
I just want to know how it was working with Peele, and what you thought of his movies as well.
I thought that was addressed, but again, what do you do? Are you a student? What do you do?
I work construction renovation.
You work construction renovation.
And I make music as well.
And you make music. So if someone, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic and shit. I mean, I'm an actor. Somebody gave me an opportunity to act. Somebody asked me if I wanted a job. And I was like, yeah. So, it happens. I mean, this is why I don't mean to be a smartass about it. as it happened, he happens to be a good director, he happens to be a good writer, and he happens to be a really decent human being. So I had a fantastic time. It was really quite wonderful. And would I do it again? Oh, yeah. Me too.
Right here, yeah.
Somebody.
No,
over there.
no,
Huh?
you.
Oh. Yes.
My favorite role of yours, apart from Child's, is Dr. Facilier in Princess and the Frog.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering if you had any insight on working on a Disney project, anything you'd like to share.
Well, I mean, again, I was thrilled to join the pantheon of Disney villains. Most of you, I see a couple of old timers out there, but most of you probably won't remember Snidely Whiplash. Anyone know who that is? Yeah. How many? Did anybody remember Dishonest John? He was on Beanie and Cecil. Dishonest John. Who was just a great bad guy. I was the other one I was thinking of, Oil Can Harry. Anybody remember Oil Can Harry from Mighty Mouse? That's you guys. Yeah. Wow. But these are all great guys who you love to hate, and even Facilier. I mean, when my daughters were young, when it came out, and when Facilier steps on the bug, his name is not Junior. I can't think what his name is. Raymond. When Facilier steps on Raymond, my daughter was like, "Oh, Daddy, how could you do?" But again, a great guy who you love to hate, because you actually wanted to see if he could do any more. How can he get himself out of this? Who knows? One of these days, Facilier may crop up in some other dimension, some other circumstance where he got a reprieve from the other side. I look forward to that time.
We can do one more. Okay, someone who hasn't asked a question. Yep, you.
Yeah.
You.
That's true, I don't check. Okay, I had two, but I'll try to make them
Just take your time.
I was gonna ask, how refreshing is the journey you've had with how many opportunities are people have mentioned Princess and the Frog, but there's also My Dad's a Bounty Hunter, which I loved your role in that, and no one's mentioned that one. So that's one question, and my other question was also how much do you charge for voice acting and stuff like that?
How much do I charge for voice acting?
I want to go to school to become a film director. I do writing and stuff, and I hope to get into the industry one day. And you're one of my favorite voice actors, so it's that'd be cool.
Listen, I like to work, first of all, and it certainly depends upon the piece. If you have funding and you have money, I want some money. I mean, I do this because I like it, but I got to eat too, And I appreciate when I am getting paid commensurate with what I bring to the table, and the breadth of my experience. We're on strike right now because all you want to, all you really want to feel when you go to work is to feel respected. Yes, I have to eat, so I have to get paid, but I don't necessarily do it for the money. I do it because because part of my soul, this is the way my soul is filled and fulfilled. But I also don't want to feel taken advantage of. So if you have some money, offer me some money. If you don't have it, be honest about what you don't have, so that again, I can feel good about us having a mutual experience. It does not feel good. I don't care what you do, construction or music. If I know you got, $10 million and you offer me 50 cents, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't make me, I'm not going to compromise my principles or my work ethic. So I'm going to do the same job for 50 cents that I would for $200,000. But how I feel about it will be, is different contingent upon if I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, if you're ripping me off. And that's, it's a heart thing more than it is a pocketbook thing.
All right, well, I see the next panel pouring in here, so everybody put it together for Kieth David. Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry for my tardiness, but you should have seen it.